Just one time, then maybe, baby, you'd be mine. Maybe I'm just asking for too much, but if life's a day.
Just another day at the office.
Your last name, I don't want to butcher it if I say your last name, Daniel.
Please.
No, with
De Granville.
Well, in Brazil we say de Granville. But,
de Granville. De Granville.
But nobody in the US will say that. So I'm used to de Granville.
Okay. So I'm sitting here, this is SDM Wildlife Podcast, and I'm sitting here in Brazil on our final day with Daniel de Granville, and we are, he is the tour operator that put us on Anacondas this week. It was an absolutely amazing trip. It was, for me, it was a dream come true, being able to be in the water with this animal, with this predatory species. It was just one of these animals that have so much myth and mystery behind them, and there's so much that is not known about these animals. And for me, just being here and experiencing these animals was a thrill, and to be able to sit here, Daniel, with you finally after all these years of chatting with you,
finally,
it was an amazing week. Thanks again for hosting us and for putting us on these animals and showing us your world for a little while, you know.
Thanks. I had a great time too. I mean, I'm always thrilled to look for these animals every time, and every operation I learn something new from them, and I have a new experience, and it's always exciting. I never get bored of doing that.
So part of what I do, or what I want to do on these podcasts, is talk about these animals a little bit, as far as the myths behind these predators, because there's so much that's not known about these animals. And for years, there's this like. There's what people believe is these mindless monsters that the second you get in the water with them, or the second you get near these animals, they want to kill you, or they're trying to kill you. I mean, which is completely opposite of what we know about predators. I mean, your experience with these animals, and obviously you deal with this a lot more than I do, especially with anacondas. I mean, I deal with it with sharks and whatever else that we're working with, but for anacondas, I mean, what are some of the things that you've been told through the years as far as these animals are concerned, and their dangers?
Yeah, well, you know, I think for every predator, no matter a shark, an anaconda, or a jaguar, the key is to respect the animal. We will never do things like corner an anaconda or grab it or anything that could disturb it too much. If you respect the animal and you do things the proper way, I think the chances of having a problem go near zero. At least us, in these 10 years of going after anacondas with photographers and film crews, I never came through a situation that we noticed that the safety was being jeopardized, like there was a risk, imminent risk of attack or anything. And when we feel that the snake is maybe getting annoyed, we let it go. That's the key. And we notice, and there's some studies that show that the larger the anaconda is, the more docile, the more calm it is. And we've been noticing that the huge 18-20 feet long, thick as a truck tire snake, it's very gentle. You know, it swims in the bottom of the river swiftly and calmly, and that's really surprising. Doesn't have anything to do with what Hollywood say sometimes, you know, anaconda movies. It's totally a different story in real life.
Yeah, well, definitely movies tend to turn these guys into monsters, especially an animal as peaceful as an anaconda. And absolutely right. I mean, what you see with the anacondas is the same thing we see with our very large tiger sharks or great whites. The larger the shark, the more standoffish it is, the more fearful it is of things that it doesn't understand. And the reason why, I mean, they get to these sizes is by being careful, is by being smart. And I think the same thing happens with, you know, like these big snakes that, you know, they're really cautious around new things, or, you know, and obviously they get to a certain size and become, I guess, kings of their domain. by being this smart and being this careful. I mean, I think it's awesome. Um, Another thing I wanted to talk about is the conservation behind these animals. What I loved about this operation that you do here, and their operation is Photos in Natura, right? Did I say that right? Is the fact that, you know, a lot of the work you guys are doing is on private land. So these animals are not, you know, they're not in open areas where they're exposed to a lot of danger, you know, especially from people that want to capture them for the pet trade or for their skin or for their meat. I mean, I think it's awesome that these kind of setups are really are beneficial for these animals. You know.
Yeah, and I believe, I really feel that the work that we've been doing over these years, showing Anaconda and bringing down this myth, is really making landowners conscious. And nowadays, many landowners are proud that they have anacondas in their stretch of the river, and so that's very, very important for us. In the past, we would hear that a rancher that had an anaconda in its land would just kill it because the anaconda could catch a calf or a dog. But nowadays, you know, we get calls, hey, there's an anaconda here in my property, you want to come and see it and photograph it? So I think this kind of work, a conscious work with ecotourism in a sustainable way, not only brings down the myth for general public, but makes landowners proud of having wild species in their property, and that's very important for conservation.
I think that's awesome. I mean, that's my favorite part, is the fact that, yeah, you're not only changing the mind of people out there that have this stigma about these animals, but also the locals, you know, and helping the locals understand that they have an amazing resource that they can take advantage of, and not in a negative way, but in a positive one. You know, that's awesome.
Yeah, there's a funny story about this. Some years ago, we had a Brazil's major TV network doing a story on anacondas here, and it was aired on Brazil's most popular Sunday night show. And the night before it was aired, and the night it was aired, I was like, I couldn't sleep at night because I said, oh man, tomorrow they're gonna kick me out of town because no tourists gonna wanna come to this region anymore because of big anacondas. A couple days later, some travel agents came and, hey Daniel, after the show was aired on TV, there's people coming to my agency, they want to book that one tour where they can see the big anacondas. So no, the effect was really positive in that sense.
That absolutely quite the opposite. The same thing happened in the 80s when they first started advertising shark diving in the dive magazines, which was, you know, a complete taboo at the time. And you know, they thought like everything was going to fall apart. People were going to stop diving. They're going to stop going to these places because of an advertisement for shark diving in the Bahamas. And it was quite the opposite. Everybody started getting really excited and wanted to go to the Bahamas and go shark diving. And it's, you know, kind of the same thing, I think, you know, with the snakes. You know, like you know, we're seeing that even with just the small posts that I'm doing on social media. The excitement about these animals is really high, and it's just great to see. You know, not only you know, for all the predators, you know, for different predator species around the world, that, you know, that places like this exist where you can send a positive message, and there's people like you to send it. I think it's awesome.
Yeah, and that's how we believe that these things should be done. Really, small groups, small operations, and being very, very honest about the chances of finding the animal or not with the clients that come here and pay a significant amount of money to be here. And we really, we that's our cornerstone, is to make sure that we keep expectations to a realistic level, because the anaconda it's not an easy animal to find, because you can't bait an anaconda. It doesn't make any sound that you could hear and go after. It doesn't leave any tracks. So it's not an easy task, but you know, with knowledge and dedication and experience, we've been having very, very successful seasons over the past years.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you guys having me out here. It took a long time to get here, and I'm excited about every second I spent out here. You know, so I know that we got to go catch a bus right now. We got to take off. We're going home. Sadly, I really don't want to leave. I could spend another month out here just with all the wildlife that this place has to offer. And what, you know, I know that you guys also do. You know, it's not just anacondas, but you guys offer jaguar expeditions and different species as well. So, I mean, I don't know if you want to chat about that a little bit and before we say goodbye. And
no, yeah, I think, you know, Brazil is, especially this part of Brazil, is so distant from the U.S. or Europe, that the person who has dedicated time and effort and money to get all the way to here, not very far from where we are looking for anacondas, you can find other amazing wildlife experiences like jaguars, piranhas, caimans, freshwater stingrays, giant otters, you name it. So I mean, ideally, if the person is able to combine a program where you can come not only for anacondas but for other wildlife, this part of Brazil has an amazing menu of species to be seen, and that's important to explain. Normally outside of Brazil, when someone hears about watching wildlife in Brazil, most people would think about the Amazon. The Amazon is very rich in wildlife, but it's much more difficult to see them because you're in a dense tropical jungle. Whereas in this part that we are now, in the Brazilian savannas, the Cerrado, and in the adjacent Pantanal wetlands, you have much more of a clear landscape, naturally clear vegetation, more like really like savanna-like. So that makes it easier to see wildlife, to find wildlife. So I always say, if a wildlife lover or a photographer or filmmaker that's looking for great scenes, great interaction with wildlife, this is by far the best part of Brazil to be in.
I completely agree. And again, thank you so much.
Thanks,
really
mate.
appreciate
Great
it.
time, and see you next year.
Absolutely. I'll
Yeah?
be here.
I'm counting the days.
Yeah. So anyway, we're going to end our podcast with that. I want to thank Daniel again for an amazing week. I'm going to journey home now, but it was an absolutely fantastic time. Thanks for listening, guys.
Thanks, guys. Good, huh?
I hope it recorded. It was recording and it was like, okay, yeah, it looks like it did. Okay. But either way, I have a backup.